The views, comments, stories, and opinions shared within this podcast are our own, or those of our guests, and in no way represent the views of the companies, associations, or organizations that any of us may work for or represent. All stories, events, and tales shared within this episode may or may not have happened in the manner in which they were told. They may or may not have even happened at all. The details have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty alike. This is Squawk Ident. Welcome aboard Flight 134 of the Squawk Ident podcast, recorded on the 29th of May, 2023, from the Aviator Sound Studios, located somewhere in Southern California. On today's flight, I'm joined by some fantastic Squawk Ident podcast crew members. Together, we will discuss why anyone in their right mind would open a cabin door in flight. Maybe to let some fresh air in? I don't know. We listen to some audio feedback. We also hear from Captain Rogers' recent Puerto Rico trip, and much, much more. But before we get into all those topics, we have the privilege today of having a featured guest on our show. He is a certified flight instructor and a check pilot, a former Embraer 145 pilot for Sand Piper Airlines, and currently a Boeing 787 Dreamliner pilot for TransGlobal. He is the co-author of the Airline Transition Manual, and he is here today to discuss his journey in aviation, his new book, and the process of getting it published. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Flight 134 of the Squawk Ident podcast. Joining us today is an outstanding aviator and Squawk Ident co-host. He is a U.S. Navy Reserve's Chief Information Systems Technician, Certified Flight Instructor, and an Embraer 175 pilot for Sand Piper Regional, the alias to one of Legacy Airlines' wholly owned regional airlines. Joining us live right here from the Aviator Sound Studios, please help me in welcoming to the show, Mr. Alex D. Alex, how you doing?
It feels weird sitting in this closet that you kept telling me about, but I'm here. I'm here. I'm
excited.
It's
nice in the closet, Alex. It's nice in here.
Well, now this means that I'm going to have to come out of the closet when I'm done with this show.
Well, when the show's finished, you can leave the closet. Yeah. But for right now, you're in the closet.
Oh, I'm good. Doing good. Just finishing up some last little bit of move prep and everything like that. And
yeah,
we leave in 3 weeks. So
God, 3 weeks. Yeah. You're packing up. You're packing up your whole family, and you're moving not just across the town or this next city over. You're going to Texas. How long is that move going to take?
So my wife and I are going to drive it. We're going to try to leave the day after Father's Day, and we're going to try to leave 9 o'clock in the morning and take 2 days to get out there. Albuquerque is going to be our stop for the overnight because
that's a long stretch.
I can drive. I could do the whole drive by myself.
Wow.
I mean, it's pushing it, but you know, it's like 19 hours, you know, call it 24 hours with stopping and getting gas and getting food and going to the bathroom and all that. But someone needs to stop and stretch her legs and, you know.
And you have children. Well, but the kids aren't going to be with you.
No, they're going to be with Dad for the summer. So it's going to be easier, at least on the initial, to get everything moved out and get everything set up.
Yeah.
So,
but your minions won't be there to move boxes for you.
No, but I'll enlist the help of some of the people that I know in the Texas area so far.
Oh, you think so, huh?
Maybe. I mean, I haven't put the text out yet, but thanks for putting me on blast on that one.
Rob, block your phone number.
I was going to say Rob, Kyle, Mike, you know, a couple of Mike's neighbors. Yeah, there's a few out there that I could, you know, lean on.
Well, we look forward to hearing more about that as it comes. And I know a big move like that is always kind of, well, it's big. It's a lot of work. It's stressful on yourself, on the family. And so I wish you luck. I'd say I'd help you, but I'll be here in California and probably flying. So sorry about that.
No, trust me, you're good. I appreciate the offer, but you're good. It's basically all on us now to get everything just kind of situated and moved and done. Yeah. So that's about where we're at.
Yeah, and you're still flying a full schedule. So
yep. I managed to work my schedule till I could get 5 days off around the move and a trip that starts a little later. So you know, if I can move and do some things on that secondary trip after we've moved in, because I know that my wife's going to need the help. So I'm going to try to do what I can to be there.
Yeah. Good man. Well, I wish you the best. Good luck. And if you need anything at all during the move, give me a call and I'll I'll give you a sympathetic ear.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. Yeah, just because that's all that you can do at this point.
One of our co-hosts here, he's quietly saying, "God, thank God I live in the other side of the country here." Let's introduce him, shall we? Also joining us today is another superb aviator and Squawk Ident podcast co-host. He is a retired Army colonel, a former Black Hawk Battalion commander, and he has commanded Apaches, Black Hawk C-12s, UC-35s, and EMB-145s. He has a master's degree in management and strategic studies. He is currently a Boeing 737 pilot for Global Airlines, a name we use here on the show as an alias to his employer, a U.S. mainline carrier. Joining us from his home studio in Northern Virginia, where he's currently sitting on long haul reserve. Help us in welcoming our very own Terry S. Terry, how you doing?
Doing okay. It's been a busy month, but managed to have today be my first day this month where I have sat unused by the scheduling department. So
yeah,
it's only what, the 29th? So
Jesus
not
Christ.
too bad, right?
Only took them, the whole month for you to not be used.
Only took them all month. It's been crazy.
So they've used you every reserve day so far.
I've sat 5 field standbys this month, and the days that I haven't been sitting field standby, I've been flying.
Jeez.
Oh, wow. So, and
yeah,
help me out here, because you're using terminology. I get it. I understand it, but it's a little bit different terminology than what we use over at Legacy Airlines. What is field standby?
Sure. So for us, field standby entails being on the airport property for 4 hours at a time, so that if there is a flight that where, say, somebody gets sick and it needs to go out, or the crew times out, they've got a reserve who's sitting there right there at the airport, ready to go. So I've only been used on one of those field standby assignments where the crew actually timed out, and both the captain and I were sitting field standby in the crew room, and we were able to go and get that flight out within an hour after getting called. So it makes for I don't want to call it a more efficient operation, but it allows the airline to get the flight off the ground quickly, especially when there's been long delays. Like that particular flight had been delayed 4 hours already for maintenance, and that's what caused the crew to time out. So having us right there, we were able to get those passengers on their way.
Yeah. So we call it airport standby, which Legacy doesn't have for the pilots. They have them for the flight attendants, airport standby, but the pilots, they don't. So how do they get around that? Well, they schedule us on 3 and 4 hour sits in base. It's not your base, but somebody's base, like Charlotte or Dallas or Miami. Or so you got these 3 and 4 hour sits, which I have another one coming up in a few days, 3 hours and 45 minutes in DFW.
You're getting used.
I'm basically a line holder reservist. And it sucks. And I almost feel like, well, make the junior guys sit airport standby a couple times a month and alleviate those schedule delays, because really that 3 hour sit in an airport that's noisy and you really don't have any place to lay down. And a lot of times they have crew rooms, sure, but you ever wonder what an airline thinks of your employees or your pilots? Go look at their crew room, and if it looks like the chairs are broken and the coffee makers are broken and they're all haphazardly put together, then you work for a real airline. But I mean, anything more than that, and you're working for Google or Amazon or something like that.
Our crew room's nice in Dallas. We have amazing couches and lounge chairs and recliners.
And they're not all broken?
No.
And the leather's not all broken?
Yeah, it's all.
And the coffee makers actually work?
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to freaking.
I told you,
Sand
I will
Piper,
write
man.
you a letter.
He makes more money than I do. So
That's true. That's true. God. Well, so you were sitting airport standby or field. What do you call it?
Field standby.
Field standby. Okay. And is that a tough thing? You think you'll have to do that very long, or is it usually the junior pilots get that assignment?
If you're on reserve, so at Transglobal, everybody starts out on the long call reserve, and then crew scheduling converts you as necessary to either short call or field standby, or they'll leave you on long call. So like today, they left me on long call, but I've been converted several times this month. So, some things that I know the negotiating committee is looking at for the next contract, and hopefully they're able to get that fixed.
Yeah, and maybe we'll talk if we have time. I'd like to ask both of you actually about your TA or AIP, or has the contract been passed, or what's going on over there at Transglobal? Nothing yet.
Not yet.
Nothing yet.
Still negotiating.
Still negotiating. Okay, well, hopefully something will come together pretty soon. But let's move on, because today we're very excited to have a guest and a friend join us today. And he reached out to me not too long ago, as we've kept in touch over the years. We have a connection that we'll talk about here in a moment. But our next guest is a graduate from Southern Illinois University of Carbondale. He was a flight instructor at Ohio University's Aviation Department, and at OU, he was a CFI, a II, and a 141 check pilot until he gained employment at Sand Piper Regional, an alias to one of Legacy Airlines' wholly owned airlines. In 2018, he was able to acquire a position as a pilot for Transglobal Air. There's your guys' connection. It's another alias to a U.S. Legacy airline. That's where he currently operates the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. That's wicked awesome. He's here today to tell us about his journey in aviation and to discuss his latest book, the Airline Transition Manual, which he co-authored with Richard Swindell and Yolanda Whitfilet. Today, we are very excited to have Andrew Ross join us on Squawk Ident. Andrew, how you doing?
Thanks, Tony. I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. This is it's funny. Well, you can't see the screen, but it's my previous job into my new job. It's a fun, whole circle type of situation. But it's wonderful to be here. It's been an extremely busy month, as we kind of talked about prior to starting. And I'm also, Alex, I don't know if you budgeted for blinds yet, but coming on your discussion from Flight 133, that is the hidden horrible part of new builds. It is unbelievably expensive to put blinds on your that's currently why there's so much natural light coming in here, because I'm not going to spend $130 on something that I don't sleep in right now. So
joy. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that. That's just making me regret, not having blinds put in already. So thanks. Appreciate it.
But you know what? It's better than the smoke crusted blinds if you had moved in somebody else's house and it's all stained with whatever smells was in their house. So, take it or leave it. This is my second house that I built. I still will do it, but I'll complain about it because I'm a pilot. So I do that. Yeah. And then I have a good story about sitting we'll call it, or whatever we call it, airport standby. Now I've got it backwards, but the name popped into my head as we were sitting here talking about it. But airport ready reserve, as Sand Piper would call it. Yeah. But I actually liked the genesis of this book actually lies in that 4-hour sit. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's great to be here. I'm honored to be on and happy to chat.
Yeah, and you and I have a connection that goes way back. Now, you and I first met out on the line over at Sand Piper.
I remember, I think our most memorable time for me was when I was a check airman and we were doing captain checkouts. You had been blessed by the FAA at that point to do the captain fed rides.
That's
right.
And
the first flight we had a double aborted takeoff, and the student at that point, I was the relief pilot checking. You were doing the fed thing in the jump seat, and we had to abort twice and pulled off. And I'm just looking over at the captain to be said, what do you think we should do? Playing that check airman role. And you're looking at him and we're both looking at him like, come on. He goes, well, I think we should go back to the gate. I'm like, oh, that's the best thought you've ever had. And then we break up because I was afraid he was going to try to do it again. Like, this is going to be the same thing. So he passed that day, but we were 3 hours late. All it was a Lexington turn. We did a check there and a check on the way back, and it turned 3 hours late. It was a lot of fun, but that's my most memorable time with you was folding ourselves into that airplane.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So maybe because I know we've flown together a few times, but I do remember that now that you mentioned it, I completely blocked that out. But towards the end of my career there, I was, like you said, blessed by our, what's he called? Not
POI?
POI. Yeah, POI.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, we've run out of budget. We have so many captain upgrades happening at the time, and we were almost hiring street captains, and we have so many that the FAA can't sit there and budget to have me out of the office to go and sit there on the line day in, day out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some senior check airmen that I know I can, trust, and I appreciate their work ethic and everything. And he was familiar with us and had done plenty of observations on us at the time. And he took myself and Max Friend, I believe, was the other Chicago-based check airman that was blessed by the what they called FAC, an FAA authorized check airman. And so instead of the FAA sitting in the jump seat doing the Fed ride, they would have us do it. And we would sit there in the jump seat, and then you were the check airman that was sitting in the FO seat, and you were still signing the book. And here's something that maybe our listeners don't realize, that when you upgrade to captain, you go through your training, you go through the simulator checkout, and you get your type rating, and you have your certificate in your pocket, but you haven't completed your IOE, your mandatory hours of observation from a check airman. So until that happens, you sit in the left seat. You are, by all accounts, the captain, but you're not signing the book, the flight log, the AML, whatever your company calls it. You're not signing that. The check airman is still responsible because you haven't been completely signed off yet. So you're having the check airman sign the book, but they're observing you do all your captain duties and making, most importantly, those captain decisions. And yeah, I can remember that. We had to abort. Do you remember what was the cause for the abort?
It was a silly anti-ice failure. Like, it was a caution message. It was, we knew it was just some computer thing that was going on where they had to go in the back and like reset the box or something. And because it was something where as soon as you got it above 55% or 55 degrees in the throttle quadrant, and that's when it would go off.
Yeah.
So we knew it was not a real problem, but you still couldn't go. So we were just, okay.
And so that would bait a lot of people, to like, well, I know it's spurious. Let's go out and let's go anyway, right? And I remember looking over, going, let's see, because I can't say anything. So
you can't say, and I don't want to say anything because it's his check ride. So I was like, well,
good choice. Very good choice.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, no, it's a great memory. Thank you for bringing that back. So, and you stayed on to there. We'll talk about your journey and how long you were there at Sand Piper as well. But your journey obviously started somewhere, right? Everyone has their story. Yeah. Most people think, I was 3 years old and I was looking up and I saw these things called chemtrails. No, I mean, I saw an airplane. And it's how did your journey begin? Were you very young and into that kind of stuff, or was there anyone that particularly started it for you?
I will say that it was no one. I was self-started, definitely not self-funded, but certainly self-started. There's nobody in my family. I am the first an anomaly, and I'm the only one still. No, we don't have a flight attendant. We don't have a technician. We don't have a manager in our family. We have nobody. So it really came from going back and forth to Ohio, where all of my extended family was. Mm-hmm. And we would travel on another airline. I don't even depend, whoever, was cheaper at the time. And we would go down to Columbus, and I fell in love with that process. And then every time we passed by the airport, I would just be glued outside. And then model airplanes, which you can't see, but they're above me or will be above me when I get them unpacked. That kept feeding into it. And at one point, I think in middle school, my mom was like, "Oh, Andrew, you want to go? You want to go take flying lessons?" And she goes, we were actually by an airport in Chicago called Schaumburg Airport, which we all pass over going into O'Hare. And she goes, "Oh, we can get you private, or get you." She didn't know what it was. She said, "We can give you a lesson in a propeller airplane." I said, "No, that's okay. If I go do that for a living, I'm just going to fly the jets." Of course, having no idea how that process worked whatsoever. But the moral of that story was that I was blessed to have two very, very, very incredibly supportive parents who knew nothing about it, but were still willing to let me go and try it. And through just fact finding and doing some research and actually going down to where I eventually went, Southern Illinois, they did various. Back in 2004, the industry was still not doing well. They were doing general aviation career days. So we would travel, and they would send advertisements all over the state and surrounding states. And we would all drive down and we would see airplanes. And that's where I really understood, or started to understand, what I actually had to do to become a pilot. Yeah. And so I came back from that in my fall of junior year of high school, I said, okay, I'm going to go do this. Funny thing about me up until that point is I had absolutely no ambition outside of hanging out with friends and or taking my studies seriously in any capacity. Didn't even know what a good GPA was supposed to be. And I wasn't a bad kid. I just didn't care. Like I had no desire to do any of it. It just didn't do anything for me. But aviation kind of was that turning point. And as soon as I got into that, I started becoming embarrassed of my GPA. I started, I wound up get this. I undug myself out of my horrible GPA and still graduated with a horrible GPA. But it was my ACT score was good enough, and then I already had my private by the time I went to college. That nice. I was able to sucker my way into a great school. But that gets into my purpose. And so from coming from high school where I had no ambition to do anything, aviation was my path to the rest of my life. And eventually, not only did I hate school so much, I went from hating school so much, I actually did get my master's a couple of years ago in something completely unrelated to aviation and organizational leadership with a focus in nonprofit management. That was just for fun. I did that for fun. Which is.
And how you went to school for fun?
Hey, don't knock it.
Okay, no, I'm not. I'm a melodic. I'm giving you the credit for getting your master's, and
I've always been interested to do that. And I thought, well, I could do it online while I'm on layovers. I could be, turning in papers and doing stuff online. But
yes. How
did you do that? How did you keep a full schedule and have the time to get everything done under deadline?
being on a big airplane. I think that's about the only way I can answer that, because when I got hired at Trans Global, I got hired into the 757, 767 fleet here. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the thing that a lot of pilots don't like to say is that we have a lot of time on our hands, more often than not. And when you get to bigger airplanes, you have even more time on your hands, because while you're flying is 8-9 hours at a time, you're sitting for 24 hours in between that, and your flight leaves late and it gets back early. So you wind up having this huge amount of time. So that helped me. Because I wound up sitting around, and even commuting was cake. If you're commuting, you can do all of this stuff from the road because you're just doing it in the back of the airplane. So, that's kind of how I did it. I got lucky basically, because I actually got accepted into the program back at Sand Piper, got offered the job at Trans Global, and then I put the master's on hold because I didn't want to do papers and a type ride and learn a new airline and commute to the coast.
Yeah.
So I did that.
Now, where were you based when you first started over at Trans Global?
The Bay, San Francisco. Our entire class was sent there.
So you did the opposite of what I was doing when I was in Chicago. I was living in California for a time, in San Francisco for most of the time, in Los Angeles, and even some time up in Seattle. And I was doing the East Coast to get to work, and you were doing the opposite, which I guess is beneficial if you think about it, because I had to leave at dark 30 in order to get to Chicago on time for my sign-in, because I didn't want to have to come in the night before. And as long as I was senior enough to hold a line that started after noon, I could do it. But for you actually had a little bit of a benefit, because you're coming from Chicago and you're going to the East Coast. So you're going to gain those 2 hours. Gives you a little bit more flexibility.
I actually never commuted out the day before. Well, I did once because I picked up a trip on purpose that left early, but I never commuted out the day before a trip, because you could leave at 6 a.m. Central Time and you could get there at 8 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah.
And all of our stuff left around then. The only sacrifice is that you lost your entire day going home.
Yeah.
So even if I left, the earliest we could get off on our last day was like 10 a.m. So like the soonest I could get home, I would land at like 6 p.m.
Yeah.
So you basically lost your entire last day or your day off the next day. But that's fine.
Well, you pay your dues somehow. I just paid them on the front end, and you paid them on the back end. That's absolutely true. Yeah, absolutely. Now,
that's right.
So you had this aspiration to go after an aviation career. And when you realized that you can't just like step into the jet, you had to hit those propellers. How did you transition from there? You were building your time and getting your private and your instrument over at Schaumburg, is that right? And then did you go to an aviation school over in Southern Illinois, or how did that work?
Yeah, so I in high school, it was closer to me from where I lived to DuPage Airport, which is southwest of Schaumburg's like due west, but DuPage Airport is southwest of O'Hare.
Yeah.
And there was a flight school there that awesome. They're still there. I got my private through them, and then Southern Illinois University has a large aviation program, and that was who my original instructor was. He was a graduate from there. So I was already thinking about it because I had went down there for the career fair, and then having him, who was just a phenomenal pilot, he could, as all of our first flight instructors are, right? Mm-hmm. They're all the best.
They're all aviation gods.
You still hear their voice in your head, whether it's accurate information or not. But you still hear it.
What do you think we should do?
No, more was just.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Oh, he's mad again. As a high school, you're teaching a high schooler, it is what it is. Yeah. So I went to Southern, got all of my other ratings there, instructed part-time. From there, I went to Hewlett Packard. I don't know if we can say that. It doesn't matter because they really don't have a corporate flight department anymore. But Hewlett Packard was for an internship that at the time they had 7 Gulfstream 5s. They flew all over the world. It was an incredible operation.
Wow.
The CEO at the time hated flying, yet he loved the plane. So that happened. But unfortunately, just like most things that do happen, or some things that the I guess common story in corporate aviation is that CEO left. The next CEO came in, lived in Germany. That CEO lasted 6 months. The next person who came in, I believe, is still the current CEO of one half of HP. They split the company, and now they have 2 G5s between both companies. None of my friends work there anymore. And at the time when I got done with the internship, it ended in like early September 2009. Horrible time to graduate, by the way. A horrible time to try to find a flying job. This internship was a godsend in the moment. At the time, I was planning on just going and mowing lawns like I did in high school. So that came along, helped me greatly, but I was left with a goal. I can't hire you as a Gulfstream pilot with 700 hours. You need to go get your time. And I said, okay, I'll suck it up. Once the airlines start hiring, I guess I'll go to the airlines. So fast forward to, getting back into Carbondale. The school was in a really bad financial position, as is most of the state of Illinois, pretty much still is. But they couldn't hire anybody there. And the first person that I got my double I while I went back, so it was kind of like extracurricular stuff. Double I, wrote papers, something, anything to get basically a student loan so I could live. Mm-hmm. And then Ohio University needed an instructor through their connection with SIU. And I said, I got to go where the flying is. And I went to OU and I taught there until Sand Piper started hiring at the same time as another regional. They were the first 2 to hire right after the 2008 meltdown. And we had an agreement at Southern Illinois with them that it was somewhat under the table, and it's kind of laughable now, but as soon as you get 1,000 hours, they'll talk to you, which back then you only needed, your commercial multi. They didn't care. You didn't, because you could fly as an FO, right?
Right.
So that agreement got me into Sand Piper when it did.
Yeah.
So from there in March 2011, I stayed there until Transglobal called, and actually Transglobal called in 2017, and then they stopped onboarding for a while. So I actually waited for about 6 months for a class date, and then went to Transglobal in May of 2018 and was there ever since. But that's kind of my path to get here. And by the way, I realized when I got to Sand Piper, what a wonderful thing a schedule is. Because even though we complain about our schedule, and we heard about it, I think, it was either 133 or 132, about how it is great that you go and you spend, a week somewhere, but also the CEO can decide to leave, or whoever owns them, whatever high value individual wants to go. That's when they go. That's not up to you.
Right.
They own the airplane.
Oh yeah. What Roger was talking about. Yeah. With the on demand. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I decided airlines they mesh with me surprisingly again, and especially going through flight training in between '04 all the way to 2009, when the airlines were getting the rap that they were. There was pretty much, I was just, yeah, give me the company credit card and tell me to spend less than $50 on the steak. Sure, I'll go.
Yeah.
But this is things happen for a reason, so that's why I am where I'm at now.
Yeah, and you're telling me this story, and I haven't thought about this probably since you and I think we flew together. I think you were my FO at one point, and we went on a run, and you were like, "Hey, that's HP. I used to fly for them."
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah. They had a very distinct paint job, which they were just starting to phase out because of I don't know if anybody remembers this, but in 2007 or 2008, when all of the auto industry was collapsing and the TARP funds were initiated, that was in 08, 09. But remember when all of those companies sent their corporate jets to testify to Congress, and that made like front page news. They were these corporate operators who for a long time it was like, hey, whatever, my paint job looks the same across my whole fleet. We have like a fleet of airplanes. Walmart did it, I think. HP definitely did it. They realized immediately, oh no, this is a liability. We got to change all this. So they went to an art paint shop, and they were like, all right, give us 7 different you dealer's choice, just paint them something else that they just look like, they can't tell the difference between anybody else.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, I think that's going to start happening at some of these legacy airlines too. Yeah. Well, so your journey has been very unique, that you've kind of started putting your toe in one of the pools and decided, well, it's getting a little cold in that one. So you start running over to this one, and you're like, I like this one, and you've done this. You've kept an open mind. You didn't get stuck in one way of thinking, and you've been very flexible. And that's, I think, the important lesson here is that you have kind of always been looking forward at a new direction, a new opportunity. Even with the schooling, you looked for an opportunity, you found it, you put it on hold for a while. That's really inspiring to hear. And thank you for sharing that with us, because I think there are a lot of those listeners out there that think, well, I made it. I'm a pilot now. I work for a regional. I'm flying an actual jet. Great, but you don't want to be one of those crotchety old captains, and we've all flown with them, and go, listen, son, when I was starting out, I was making $12 an hour and living off a can of Frankenbeans. And, it's like, great. And now you're making a little bit more money, but you're still living off a can of Frankenbeans. So where'd you go? You've been working for the same company for the last 35 years. So it's good. I mean, I'm glad that you have shared that with us. Now, you're here because we're friends. We've flown together in the past. We have a history, but you did something very, very inspiring. And you co-authored this book here, the Airline Transition Manual. I've been very fortunate to get a copy. Thank you for sending that to me. It was wonderful. I've been looking through it, and I was telling you before the show that I've been carrying this book around with me, and I've been sitting there, on that free time that we have, not on the line. Not while I'm flying. I'm just, sitting there at the gate, waiting, delayed aircraft maintenance, whatever. And I've been pulling the book out, and I've been showing my captain or some flight attendants that are interested in aviation. Hey, check out this book. What do you think? And it's a really helpful book. And there are plenty of books out there that say, hey, this is what you need to know. Why did you decide to get into this venture?
So, well, actually, this is a good then segue to talk about field standby. So, when I was no longer San Francisco based, and the airline gods saw fit that I should go to the complete opposite coast on my way back to the middle part of the country, I was sitting field standby on day 1 or 2 or 3, I don't remember, of this reserve assignment. And they would do this because we had this huge bank of flights that would go to Europe at like between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. And so they would have 2 of us sit there in case weather happened, anything weird were to happen. They would send us out on these flights, either to, without getting into a big discussion about augmentation versus unaugmented flying. If we needed a 3rd pilot or we needed a 4th pilot, we would just go and do that. So I had seen Richard, who's the lead author of this book. I saw him that day. I was eating, and he saw me. He said, "Hey, what's going on?" And Richard and I had known each other. I should back that up. Richard and I had known each other and worked together when I was an Airline Pilot Association rep at Sand Piper. When I was a rep at Sand Piper, I did many different things, and one of the things was I was asked to go be part of the education committee, and I still am, actually. I still do that at a national level. And we go to schools, we really set up the infrastructure for the elementary and middle school visits, some high school stuff. We've gotten into some Boy Scout events because we now have a Redbird tabletop simulator that we'll send to events, which is really cool. But I've been part of that group for a very, very long time. But Richard was actually in charge of a group called the Pilot Development Group, and education at one point fell under the Pilot Development Group. So Richard was technically our committee's boss.
Okay.
Yolanda, who's the other co-author of this book, she was at the time the National Membership Committee chair, and PDG was a subcommittee to her committee. So she was in charge of that group, who was in charge of Richard's group, who was in charge of my group. So we had worked together many, many times over the years. And when I came to Transglobal, Yolanda was actually my check airman for the 757 when I came out. We saw each other in training at one point. She goes, "Oh, you should ask me." Yeah, should ask for me. I said, "Okay, let's go fly. Let's go have some fun." We went to Zurich. We did a domestic trip together. It was a lot of fun. It was nice to know each other in not a professional capacity. So that happened, and then we'll fast forward to when Richard and I ran into each other, and Richard was the senior 767 pilot in the base at the time, and we ran into each other. He saw me while I was eating, and we just pleasantries exchanged. And a minute or two later, I asked him what he was doing. He said, "Oh, he's going to London," which is a very, very normal thing for us to do. And he said, "But I have the 10 p.m. It's just me and the other captain." So there was no third relief pilot. I said, "Wow, that sounds miserable. Good luck with that." He was already drinking a venti Starbucks, and he was going to go and do that plus a triple shot into it as well to go across the pond. I was like, wow. So I get a call from scheduling a few minutes later, and they go, "Hey, you're on this trip because there's storms off to the west that are going to be coming through. They're going to time out immediately, so we're going to put you on as a relief pilot." So then I passed him. I went down into operations to do the crew briefing, and I beat him there somehow. And the captain and I are talking, and Richard walks up and he goes, "Hey, nice to see you again. I'm glad you had good dinner." He goes to print the paperwork, and I had the paperwork sitting in front of me. I don't think he's looked at his schedule yet. And sure enough, he comes back, and I'm like, "I already got the paperwork." And he goes, "Why'd you get the paperwork? You're not going." I said, "You should check your schedule. We're augmented now, baby. I'm going with. You can't kick me off." So from that, we saved. The funny story was that nothing actually happened. We beat the storms out by like 30 minutes, but it could have, right? So
Sure.
They put me on, made their life easy because now they get a rest break.
Mm-hmm.
So coming back, because no great conversations really happen at night. So, we're all just, "Okay, how you doing? How you been?" That type of thing, just trying to keep alert. But on the way back, we're like on our body clock, it's later in the day. We're talking. And I had mentioned that I was doing my master's, and what I had been doing on the overnight. I was probably writing a paper. And he said, "Oh, that's cool. In the military, I got my doctorate." And actually, his doctorate thesis was in union study or something. I'm forgetting exactly what it is. And I ask him for it every time, and I can't remember exactly what the term is. But his master's is in organizational leadership as well. With that, and I told him, "Oh, I have this company that I think I want to do, and this is what. And I'm also going to get an executive coaching certification and all this other stuff." He said, "Okay, well, you got to write all this down. You got to do that." Anyway, so we had this really, really productive conversation about doing a master's program and doing being kind of our futures and stuff like that. And then we parted ways, and 2 weeks later, he gives me a call and says, "Hey, Yolanda and I have had this idea for a company that we batted around for quite a while, and we want to know what you want. If you want to come in and kind of either consult on it or be a part of it or do whatever." And the idea was, and I think everybody will know some, because we all have now some variation of this. Transglobal calls it Professional Pilot Development Class, PPD. But the idea was that they were seeing a lot of new hire pilots come in that had no idea how to actually operate in the airline environment.
Right.
Now, Richard came from Air Wisconsin. So I don't know if we call that something. I'm sorry. Richard came from that regional, and he decided that he had seen how that really works, right? When you started a regional airline, they spoon feed you 121 regulations. You do not have to figure it out on your own.
Yes.
I can't speak for Legacy, but Transglobal, you get like 5 minutes. They're like, okay, there's this thing called an AML, and it's going to print off electronically questions. And in class, there were a few military people flanking me, and we'd get through this, rapid fire PowerPoint and then go on to the next leadership building thing that we had to do. And they would look over at me and go, what did we just talk about?
Yeah.
What is that? There's a printer in the airplane. And I'm like, yeah. And it was really, really a frustrating thing. But I realized that what they were seeing was the product of people that had come that didn't need to make that stop at a regional airline. They are seeing these people that had to make this jump. And it was specifically the military pilots that were having the most issue. Now Richard is an F-15. He, like I said, he had his doctorate in the Air Force and everything. Richard was an F-15 pilot, retired out of the military as an F-15 pilot, or finished his deployment as an F-15 pilot before he went civilian. So we kind of asked him, like, if you had skipped your regional airline and just went directly to United, what questions would you have had? Because a lot of this stuff, there's no book like this book that basically tells you from start to finish, this is how the airlines operate. This is how you operate at the airline. Because there's plenty of books that talk about regs. There's plenty of books that talk about flying a jet or flying IFR or doing anything. And they all are really good at doing that. But nobody tells you how to bid a schedule. Nobody tells you what bidding a schedule means. Nobody tells you how to non-rev.
You'll learn on the line. You learn while you're out there.
Learn on the line. We hated that saying. That's a terrible saying.
It's still in the schoolhouse today. Like, I went through not too long ago, and it's like, oh, don't worry about that. You'll get that on the line. And all of us are like, oh,
even at the regional at this point, since the AQP program has been adopted, the Advanced Qualified Training Program. Since that's been adopted, they're only hitting the mandatory things, and a lot of this stuff, like you said, like what happened to you over at Transglobal, they just kind of skimmed over it, and they're like, oh, you'll figure it out on the line. You got plenty of time. It's not a big deal. So this is a great book that kind of outlines each step of that progress. What you and I went through over at Sand Piper, like how many weeks did we go through what they called the FM or the flight manual? So, like Legacy calls it the FOM, Flight Operations Manual.
Wait, you guys went through weeks of going through this?
Yeah,
we didn't
even do systems after 7.
We had a week.
5 days.
Oh no,
5 days. That's it. It was technically 4.5 because the 5th day was the test. So the test of the FOM, which was all open book.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's that way everywhere. But the preacher would get up every day for 2 weeks and would open the book and say chapter 1. Oh, this is what you should highlight in the book, because this is how old we have paper. Yeah,
I would have killed to have had that. We went through, and like our instructor, he was awesome, but no one knew he was the instructor the first day. And so we get in our training, and they do their little spiel. We come in, we choose our base and airplane and all that. And by like 10 o'clock, everybody's out. And now it's like to the instructor of like, oh, okay, cool. I guess I'm going to, instruct now. Well, we didn't realize he was the instructor. He's just this old guy just sitting in the corner. And he gets up and he's like, well, let me go see if I need to put you guys on break or anything. And like for the next 2 days we had him, and he would literally stand in front of the screen of the PowerPoint looking at it and just go, yeah, to himself, mind you. Like I was probably from Tony, from like your one side of the room to the other to him. Like that's how close I was in the front row. And he was mumbling to himself going, oh yeah. Oh, okay. Next. All right. And then turn around and go, you guys all get that? All right, yeah. Yeah. Okay, yeah. And next, all right, you guys get that? And by like the 6th slide of that, like people in our class are sitting there going, the fuck what was that? Like, the fuck did he just say? Like, mind you, I'm close enough to him to hear him mumble.
Oh my God.
So I would have killed to have had 2 weeks of going through, hey, you should highlight this. Hey, we didn't even talk about the release, like our actual flight release, that the same thing you guys get. Mm-hmm. And we didn't talk about that. And by the time we got to CPTs, no one had seen an actual flight release because, well, apparently it was supposed to be covered in, the week that we had FOM training, and we were all probably about, that's about it. Yeah.
Well,
that's
what led to this book. That's what, you guys got together and you said, hey, there's a need here.
It's a great need.
And so how did that progress into, okay, let's write a book about this?
So this the name of our company, the publishing company, VATH, stands for Veteran Airline Transition Handbook. Because the way this actually started was it was going to target specifically military people. And a company that does a lot of interview prep read the first draft and went, no. Everybody needs this book. You go back, you're going to have to, and that set us back like 3 months when we went back and basically scrubbed the military jargon out of everything. And you'll see it every now and again. You're going to read passages that are like, what does that mean? And it's because we just didn't catch it all. And no editor would catch it because editors don't know the difference between especially somebody who isn't a pilot, won't be able to catch that subtle difference between what is jargon for military versus jargon for aviation.
Right.
So you'll still see some of that, but the actual book started like that. And actually it started before that. Originally their original idea was to grow a online training program that people could sit through that wouldn't touch this, but it would touch etiquette. It would touch non-rev travel, which actually there's a reason that's a big section of this book. And that goes back to all of our union backgrounds, because that's one of the things that we heard a lot about when we were representatives was non-rev travel abuse. Right. And there are countless instances of pilots, new pilots, even senior pilots, of course, but a lot of new pilots. And a lot of times it was the new hires that were getting busted for things that were absolutely ridiculous. Like, it's no harm, no foul. It should not cause heartburn. But for the managers, it does. It justified their existence a little longer. So they were excited to get somebody in trouble. And that was my job, was to get them out of trouble. But that's why that's a big section, is trying to explain in as broad a terms that applies to many, many different airlines what you should and should not do generally. So, that's how that kind of grew and morphed into what is the final product in your hands, which is the Airline Transition Manual.
Yeah. And is there a favorite, like what you had the most joy writing about in this book? I mean, because in here you talk about everything from aeromedicals, alcohol and drugs, operational knowledge, training survival, which is really a great chapter to talk about how to go through training and how to run the gauntlet and get it done and not go down a road of wasted time. Bidding your schedule. I mean, that's something that, and you ask anybody in training at a new hire or an in-doc, and they're going to tell you, oh, you're going to learn that on the line. Don't worry about that right now. Just focus on the systems and all that stuff. So, I mean, here you are, you kind of help explain the scheduling process and even sleep, which I appreciate, because that's a topic I've been talking about since the beginning of the podcast, how important it is to stay healthy, to get your sleep, because, pilots don't get jet lag. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I'm living proof. I have jet lag right now. So you talk about this in the book, and all the way down to, union contracts and everything else. So is there a section or a segment in this book that you really feel strongly about more than others?
That is so hard. And I'll tell you this, you'll find this a little entertaining. I hope you'll find it entertaining, because I laugh about it. We all laugh about it collectively as a company. When we originally decided to write the Veteran Airline Transition Handbook that morphed into ATM, the statement out of Richard's mouth was, yeah, I guess we could just write this book real quick and then we can launch that. And then we can just have that go. And then we'll, create this other stuff. And we're like, sure, sounds great. Because none of us had written a book. I love reading, but that doesn't mean that I've written a book. And so we foolishly kind of went into this thinking, oh, this will be something quick. We'll knock it out in a month. But we started writing this in October 2019.
Wow. Okay.
So,
and
which also
when was published date?
Yeah, 2021. Okay. And that is that is a whole other story. But what we did is we decided, okay, what do we want to talk about? Richard gave us the list of stuff he wished he knew, and we all we just went start to finish with it. The spouse chapter, I'm just skipping around. Some of us started certain chapters, and then we all would go in and we would all pass drafts back and forth, and it became a 20 draft handoff basically between all the chapters and stuff like that. There were certain chapters at the very end that we added, like the contingency plan, that was not in there in 2019. That was a very last minute add, which is why it's also like 5 pages long. But the favorite chapter, I think it depends to me on who I'm talking to, because if I'm talking to a high school student or somebody just starting out, I'd say I want you to focus on those first 5 chapters, and then I want you to focus on the FAR chapter. If I'm talking to somebody who's at the end of CFI, I really want them to focus on training, and then I also want them to focus on unions, but then that's coming back from my education committee world, because I hated, the whole point of the education committee was so that new hires wouldn't show up day 1 of class, or day 2, I think, when the union comes in and goes, hey, we're out, but you have no choice but to sign up. Like, it's really bad sales techniques.
I believed it.
Yeah.
So, I would say that's important when I'm talking. So there's a lot of things. I love the spouse chapter though. And I've had a few spouses read this chapter. We had, of course, everybody that we knew that they had spouses. We had them read it. A few of the people that we've submitted the book to review that have been lucky enough to, basically what these companies do is you tell them, hey, this is our book. And they go find somebody that has, they hope, some sort of background in it. And then they just go point blank, read this book. And the first review we ever got back like this, the person who interviewed it, her uncle or father was a pilot, and she did not understand what was really going on with them until she reviewed our book. She goes, all I knew is that he was gone for everything. All I knew is that he would leave randomly in the middle of dinner. All I knew is that what she saw. And she wrote a really, really heartfelt portion at the very end that I don't think she wanted to be published, or she didn't want. She basically said, thank you for making me understand my family. And it was like, wow, that's really, really good. And I still have the review that I print whenever we go somewhere. I put it out because I want people to read it. And I don't think that the book, I don't think you should buy the book just to give it to your spouse. But I think that if you're going into this field, and I've consulted many, many different people who have through the education committee, not consult, but I've talked to a bunch of people through the education committee, because the union gets a lot of emails from outside, just people that stumble upon clearedtodream.org or anything like that, and say, hey, I'm thinking about a second career. Can I talk to you? And we'll pick up the phone and we'll go, what do you want to know? We're not here to sell you on it. Just what do you want to know? We're going to tell you what it's like. And that's kind of what this is. But it's good to have somebody pull it up and go, okay, you're my partner. I read this. Are you willing to accept this contract? Because sometimes that doesn't happen. Or sometimes that gets lost in translation. So we felt that was a very important chapter to add into the book as well. So the totality of the book is what I'm proud of, because we all wrote so much of each of the drafts of each chapter that all of our voices are somewhere. I can still, even after an editor goes through and scrubs and goes, I'm going to try to write this, or not write it, but I'm going to try to make it so that it sounds like it's one voice. The tone may change, but the voice has to be consistent. And you get an end result where you're still looking. I'm like, yeah, I remember writing that. And that's definitely Yolanda's tone. Oh, that's Richard's tone. So there's still enough of our personality after the editing and the 85 drafts that go on between one chapter that but it's still enough to say like, wow, this is all really fun. The tribal knowledge chapter is real fun because I love talking about airports. So that's probably just my default one. I wish our layout designer had done a cooler job with it. She literally, wonderful. The book turned out okay. Our next edition, which we just started working on, we're going to blow the book up design wise and change it up a lot. But I really wanted that section to come out different, but it's one of our favorite sections because it's all the things that is the on the line knowledge that you're going to get other than bidding and stuff like that. But like, that was like, don't worry about it. You'll figure out, yeah, O'Hare, it's weird. They go counterclockwise and clockwise, like whatever, it's fine, which now you can't even do that. We already have to rewrite that because they're blowing up Alpha and Bravo right now. So that's not even going to happen for much longer, which is terrible. It's so sad to me, although why in God's name, I'm sorry, if anybody from the Chicago Department of Aviation is listening, why during COVID did you not just redo Bravo? You had all the opportunity in the world to redo that taxiway when nobody was using it.
No, I want Victor to be redone. Victor out to 2-2. What is it? 2-2 left or 2-2 right?
Yeah, 2-2 left.
Yeah.
Is it? Well, yeah, that is getting kind of rough now.
Victor's getting really rough.
I used to know every single pothole, and I could go left and right on the yellow line.
You can't do that.
Can't do that anymore. There's too many damn potholes.
You go left and you're hitting something. You go right, you're hitting something.
I used to know every single one, and I'd slow down, and sometimes like when you're a young FO and you really don't know what's going on, the captain all of a sudden is taxiing at a good clip, and they slow down all of a sudden. You're like, what's going on? Oh, there's a big pothole here, and then you feel the airplane go donk, and you're like, oh wow, you knew what that was. Good.
No, my favorite is the metal plates they just lay out in the middle of the taxiways.
That's everywhere now. Dallas too. Yeah. But and I love this, and in this section here that you have for the spouses, you have these little jokes every once in a while in here. How was copper wire invented? 2 pilots were fighting over a penny. Come on, you're sitting here. You're reading.
I can tell you that was a Yolanda joke.
What does a pilot say on a first date? Enough about flying. Let's talk about me. God, I can't believe. Did you guys quote me? There's a microphone on when I was? I don't know. But so this book,
they just clipped it to my lapel.
We'll be right back right after a brief message from our sponsors. Now, this book, absolutely fantastic way, especially if you're a CFI right now out in the industry and you're thinking, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to make $300,000 my first couple years. I don't need a book like this. Highly, highly disagree with that.
Keith, Tony's talking to you.
Keith
Griffin. He's at
Keith,
UND.
We're going to talk about Keith.
Yeah. No, different Keith. I got two Keiths. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh. There's 2 of them.
Yeah. So don't think that, the industry is doing great and I got it made and I'm going to show up and I'm God's gift to aviation. You need something like, I wish I had this because I would have read this cover to cover before day one over at Sand Piper, and I would have walked in with a little bit more confidence, and I would have been able to focus on what was important and not worry about the small stuff.
Tony and I were just having this conversation beforehand. If I would have known this was around, I would have bought this. But I bought, Everything Explained for the Professional Pilot, and it's a good book to transition you from piston to turbine. But there's nothing talking about like what you guys talk about of like union stuff or bidding or training process or anything like that in that book. It's literally just the meat and potatoes. It's not
very technical.
Yeah, it's a technical aspect of it. Not, hey, this is reserves. Hey, this is an interview process. This is, operational knowledge of an airline versus this is the technical side of an airliner. And I'm not saying that that's not a good book, but I would have been more prepared going into Sand Piper with this, reading cover to cover, than I would have by getting the technical knowledge. So I appreciate it
heavily. Thank you. And honestly, that actually everything explained for the professional pilot was a big, what do you call it? Not motivator, influence, because that was our kind of thought was if we can do that with airline operations, that would be helpful in a big way because everything explained for the professional pilot is a key resource for a lot of students. It's one of the ones that I've recommended since I was instructing.
Yep.
So yeah.
No, I definitely, as someone looking back at this, going through, because I just went through, I'm, a year and a half into Sand Piper now. Looking back, I would have murdered somebody to have this book.
So,
thank you.
Speaking of murdering someone to have this book, for all those listeners out there that are maybe getting ready to transition to an airline or see that in their near future and they want to be as prepared as possible, where can they get this book?
Terry's got the website up.
He's
got it up.
Yeah, airlinetransition.org. There is a a page that says buy now. Click on that. You get a few options to purchase. And I'm about to do that. So
the podcast.
I'll do it while we're on this because my computer is going to blow up with a notification. And to
the 9 listeners out there who are in our podcast group,
9,
you know that this is a good book if current airline pilots are looking at this going, I'm going to buy this book. So again, Andrew, I really like this book is awesome. And like I said, I would kill to have had that book in, 2 years ago. So thank you for putting this out to people who are making that transition. Keith, definitely it is a good pickup and a good read.
Thank you. And honestly, the one of the things that I will say is that probably the hardest part about this book is it takes 4 years to pay off, because it's one of those things where you have to get it and you won't get why it's important until later. So it's kind of that like reduced, it's the delay effect. And that's been our, that's been the I would say if there's a struggle with this process, it's been that. Be like, hey, I promise this is going to come in handy later. Or like you're in your position, Alex, where you're like, well, I know pretty much what's in this book. It's not going to be as valuable to me as somebody who's a CFI. So that's definitely true.
Yeah.
Well, so Tony says this a lot. He says a good airline pilot's always learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you hear that across the industry. And I guarantee you that, I've been doing this, I'm in my first year, but coming up on a year, but I have some time at some regionals. But I guarantee you that I will take a look at this book and learn something, right? There's, because you don't know it all. But I'm looking forward to it. It'll give me the chance to go through and see what there is out there about this industry that I don't know.
Well, I know there's stuff in there that all of us can learn, because I learned things writing the book, because that's what you have to do. There's nobody who's written a book that just had all of that at their fingertips, stream of conscious, wrote it down. You got to learn along the way. Right. So I know I learned stuff in this, but I was corrected about some things as I was writing this. But I said, I didn't know that's how that was supposed to work. Whoops. But that's also the benefit of writing it with 3 different people too, is that you get a bunch of different viewpoints. And especially since our careers span back to, I believe Yolanda was hired at Transglobal. She's going to kill me if I get it wrong, but I want to say 89, 90. So she's going to listen to this recording later and she's going to go, what are you talking about? Yolanda, she has an incredible, there's also a foreign pilot section in there too. And this is what comes into that. Yolanda is actually a national of the Netherlands. She's from Amsterdam. So she speaks with a very, very, thick accent. She'll say she doesn't, she speaks with you can definitely tell she's Dutch. And she had that experience of coming over here and going through the foreign pilot. Well, she's a US citizen, but, coming over here and going through all of what needs to happen to become a pilot in the United States, and or got all of her ratings here and then became that. But yeah, she's traveled that. But she was a big advocate at the beginning to put in all of the. There's a chapter that actually we didn't write. The one chapter in this book we really didn't write was the foreign pilot chapter. We talked to somebody who just went through it, and we were like, "Do you want to write this for us, or basically tell us all the information in a Word document? We'll put it into a chapter." So, and her name is escaping me right now because I don't have the book sitting in front of me, because I'm sure it's packed away somewhere. But that was, so we wanted that we felt that was a very important thing to hit on as well.
Yeah. And you're Terry, you did say something that was very interesting. You said, I'm going to buy this book because I know I'm going to learn something from it. And it's not just that, because, a lot of people go, well, wait a minute, you're already there. You're at Transglobal. You're going to learn it on the line. Right. But if you remember back to episode 117 of Squawk Ident, Flight 117, the Leadership Toolbox, that's where I interviewed Captain Greg Jones on the podcast, who coincidentally I recently flew with last week. We got to fly together. It's been about a year since we got to fly together. We went to Suriname. It was a big deal. We both had to look it up on Google. We're like, where's Suriname? It's in South America. And it's a Dutch country in South America. So there's your whatever it is, 6 degrees of separation. But he said that what we do in our careers is that we have to fill our leadership toolbox with the tools we need to accomplish whatever the goal is, whatever the mission is. And you're going to learn these tools as you go throughout your entire career. You're not just going to learn it all at once and then you're like, okay, I'm done. Let's get working here. You're constantly learning. And that is really something that every professional pilot should strive for. Now, in reading this book, you talked about, is it Suzanne flying for Atlas?
Yes.
Okay, so Suzanne flying from Atlas wrote the portion about the foreign pilot coming to work in the United States for an airline. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure a lot of your IOE students when you were over at Sand Piper, and a lot of my IOE students coming from Sand Piper, English was their second language. They were foreign pilots. They were maybe pilots completely, learned how to be a pilot in the US, but they were foreign nationals to this country. And so there were a lot of hurdles that they had that like you and I didn't.
Yes.
So it's important if you can get these helpful hints and helpful guidance through reading this book. That's a great tool to have so that when you do get on the line, you go, that's what they mean.
Yep. Yes. You add the language barrier and then context too, because I speak Chicago and that is a very different, I don't have the accent for Chicago, but I know when I'm talking, when I say sausage, it comes out a little different. So I get it. But the point is that I'll say things that I know, but based on my lingo, based on my social cue or my the topography, I guess, but that's not the word I'm trying to find in my head. I will definitely lose the message to the receiver.
Right.
And if anybody can find a way to add that into their head before they get there, they might be like, I think he meant to say this, not that, or that is that, because Andrew just doesn't speak at a high level. So that's probably what they're.
Hey, forget about it. Don't even talk about putting ketchup on my dog, huh? Come on now. Let's go to a game. The Cubbies are gonna win. I tell you what.
Well, Andrew's right. Like it's the linguistics of how you talk. Like, I believe that's word probably you're searching for, linguistics.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
it's the same how they caught the Unabomber, right? Was because of he wrote a certain way. And he, like, in his writing, he wrote a certain way and they published it. And his brother was the one that caught him. He's like, no, that's the way my brother writes. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. No. The guy who caught him was basically, I think he was from Philadelphia, and the way he said water was wooder. Wooder, right? W-U-D-D-E-R. Can I get a glass of water? And that's what sparked him of like, well, maybe, there's something in the way that I talk. If all airline pilots, all pilots should speak, and I say this loosely, should speak the same language. And that's aviation English. So your book does a good job of that transition from a foreign pilot, which my sim partner was a foreign pilot. He's a foreign national, but he was trained here in the US, and he speaks great aviation English, which is what you should be speaking. And it helps, especially if you are a foreign national, it helps to understand. And I love how you guys talk in here. There's a whole section in the back. One of your appendices is, different ones, union terms, airline industry acronyms, and glossary and industry terms in the back here of all these different things that we may say. One thing at Sand Piper may be different at Legacy, may be different at Transglobal. Like we're all talking about airport standby, right? That's what we call it. Tony knows it as something different. You guys call it field standby or whatever, but we all know the same thing. And that's where having at least, a little bit of like insight to one another helps.
Thanks for bringing that full circle. I like that. That was a good analogy. Well, Andrew,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know we talked before the show that you had to go at a certain time. Are you still doing okay on time?
Nope, that's fine. I'm having fun. Let's stay and hang out.
Okay. But I'm sorry. So go ahead and say what you were saying.
Oh, I was going to say, if any pilots are listening that want an interesting side gig, writing glossaries is the worst job you could ever have. That, believe it or not, that is about next to creating indexes. They're just not fun. Don't you think, oh, whatever, just I can define it? No, because you have to go back and go, oh, wait, now I've defined it. Did I say something in that definition that isn't defined somewhere else or isn't common knowledge? How do you do? I can't even tell you. We hated writing those, but those are all us. That is that we didn't farm that out. That was, we basically said, whenever somebody stops us in a conversation and goes, what is that? We basically put that in a glossary.
You just sparked a thought in my mind just to give the listener an idea of how effed up my mind is, right? So you say, writing a glossary is like one of the worst things. And immediately I think of a film I saw last year that I thought was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And you just sparked that memory. It's called The Professor and the Madman. It came out in 2019. It's a biographical drama, a film directed by Farhad Safarina. I think I don't know. I think that's how it's said.
Nailed it.
It's based on a book, 1998 book, The Surgeon of Crowthorne. It was published in the United States as The Professor and the Madman. It's starring Sean Penn, Mel Gibson, Natalie Dormer, Eddie Marsan, Jennifer Ellie, and it goes on. And it's an actual fantastic kind of British period timepiece about the invention of a dictionary from the Webster's, was it University or what was it?
Might have been Merriam. I don't actually know.
Oh, the Oxford University Press, and their project for the New English Dictionary, and they had to define each word and come up with the source. And if they couldn't come up with the source, and it's a phenomenal film. And if you're into, literature and writing and you want to write glossaries for a living, watch that movie and you'll probably change your mind because one of them was a madman.
I
might start crying. If I read that, I'll just bring it back. I don't know. No, my nerdy self, yes, I'm interested in that. I'm probably going to have to go hunt that down.
Yeah, I highly
whenever I have
it.
time again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a couple Q&As before we move on to, I want to hear about this open door policy that Asiana has now, but let's talk a little bit about some Q&A for you. Now, I just wanted to ask you a couple of things. Now, you have had this journey. You said you're the only one in your family that kind of had this aviation bug. And it was in part because you had supportive parents. It was also in part because of your location. You were near a general aviation airport. You got to see that. You got to get on a regional jet and fly some of the stuff that you ended up flying yourself as a pilot, as a captain, as a check airman. Now, we all stand on the shoulders of those that came before us. So it's a common thing that someone told me a long, long time ago. I've been saying it on the show here forever. And I try to celebrate that as much as possible. Who is the person whose shoulders for which you stood on that really helped you motivate you to move forward in your career and not give up?
There are a few, and they're perhaps, well, I have to say that my parents first and foremost, and really because I think of the situation, we were very middle class, like very, not. We weren't wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. It was very much a financial burden for me to get my private. But my parents were both stuck in careers they hated. My mom was a secretary. She is where I get my writing passion from. And her and my dad are both big readers. The byproduct of being an introvert. My sister and I are both extroverts, and we have absolutely zero idea how that happens. It's like a recessive gene, like redheads. But they and my dad was an accountant by training. They hated their jobs, hated it. And they'd always told my sister and I, they're like, just go do what you love. Don't do what we did. Just go do what you love. And so there is no career. There is no book. There is no 787. There is nothing without that selflessness, because I had been around plenty of my friends whose parents did not think that way and said, nope, you're picking up the family business. Nope, you're going to school because there's no there's no career in being an actor or actress. Nope, you're going to do this. And by the way, I mean, while being a pilot always has that wow factor for people when you tell them that, when they asked me how much I made my first year, I told them I had no shame. I'm like $21,236. That's how much I made. And I have zero problem telling them that. And by the way, I'm going to preface this as a side tangent because I think it came up last week or the week before about these signing bonuses or how much people are getting paid right now. Fantastic. I never want to go back to it. Do I want no regional airline to exist? Yes. But I also don't ever want anybody to make what Tony and myself had to make when we started.
Yeah.
Hereditary.
And Terry too, yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Unbelievably ridiculous. What that was. Subhuman living.
If I put the hours in at McDonald's, I would have made double.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You could have stayed at your big box retailer and made a hell of a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And you would have made management by then. You'd own 5 McDonald's right now. But so that's first and foremost, I always got to give them the biggest props. And then the second thing is probably like most the instructors around me that I was fortunate to come in contact with. Yeah. And probably the very second one, and Transglobal does this, Everything DISC, which is this is a big national program, but we do the DISC assessment, which is Everything DISC is I'm going to nerd out on this, but Everything DISC is basically a version of this personality test. And they categorize you into 4 different quadrants. And one thing that they do at Transglobal is they ask you like who your leadership mentor is or who has this impact. And the reason that they do that is at the end of it, when you've done all these activities, you share who your leadership mentor is or who your hero is and something like that. And so mine was actually my flight team coach who throughout college, because it was his leadership style, his motivation, his care. It had been, I had that in the past, but not in an aviation setting. And he was probably the first one to we all, to this day, he can look back on the hundreds and hundreds of people that he's coached and count them all as friends. Most of them. I mean, there's some, we can't all be winners, right? But, there's a vast majority of people that he has affected positively throughout just being a teacher. He chose not to go to the airlines. He was an intern at Legacy back way before I'd been there. Chose not to go to the airlines, wanted to teach, wanted to affect that positive change. He was built for it. He loves it. He loved the area. He just wanted to stay there. So that's a big thing. And then the boss, and this is only coming up, my third one, and then I'm done. There's plenty more, but this one just came to my head, is my very first boss, who up until recently was the head of maintenance, buildings and grounds for the school district that my mother worked for. He was my first boss, and it was grueling work. It was, wake up at, 6 a.m, go mow lawns all day, go dig trenches, go do every bad, not bad. It was fun when you had good people to work with. But it was manual labor. And and then when I started becoming a pilot, or when I started training my junior year, he kept me on throughout the entire winter. I'd work 2 nights a week. That would pay me $100 a week, or I would work 2 hours a day. That would pay me like $100 a week. And I'd have like 1 flight lesson a week. And that was along with what my parents could supplement as well. That was my one. I did private pilot training from the end of sophomore year summer, so the end of junior year summer, all the way through. It took me a year and 2 months doing 1 flight a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is not the most productive way to do that.
No.
But the boss, he kept me on. He did everything he could to keep me employed so that I could make money, so that I could help my parents pay for my flight training. And that was and then when COVID happened, I'm sitting in my office, I'm writing one of the chapters, I don't even remember, for this book. And, staring at this, who knows what's going to happen to our world situation. And I texted him as soon as Transglobal they hadn't released what the displacements were going to be, but I knew I was not going to work for a couple months at that point. And I texted him and I said, "Hey, Greg, you need a free hand this summer." And he said, one of the guys actually just just said he'll make more money being a DoorDash driver. So yeah, if you want to come, I'll pay you $11 an hour. So I went and I made $11 an hour, and I worked with 2 college students and on the same tractor that I had used when I was in high school. And it was a great way to come back and go, wow,
yeah,
this is where I have come from. And this is what, hard labor is like. But I say this specifically to him because I still think he is a very, very, very intelligent person. And he was a very intuitive leader. He never fired anyone, ever. He oversaw the janitors, and the principals would fire janitors because they just didn't like janitors. But for his staff, who he had the sole authority to hire and fire, he never had to fire anyone because he understood how to talk to people. He understood how to motivate people. He understood how to handle situations, knowing what's a critical situation, not a critical situation. And that is something that I emulated whenever I was in a leadership role, is how he handled that. And I did it. I took it to the flight deck. I took it to as an FO, right? You can lead up. Yeah. I used it as an FO. I used it in this company and my other company. I've used it a million times. I wrote papers about how he handled himself. So this is just for all the listeners. I think that's important that I didn't just name 3. Chuck Yeager made me, motivated to go be a pilot because I wanted to break this up. No, it's people everywhere in your life that should do that, because every single person you come in contact with makes you who you are. Mm-hmm. So those are the people that really, really helped make me and push me to continue to go to do what I want to do. So.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, because those are important moments in a person's life when you can recognize just for a moment the people that changed you, led you, made you better, made you think about yourself and those around you, made you want to be a better person. And, thank you so much for mentioning that, because I think that makes a world of difference. It's part of the main reason I do this podcast is because I want to get the word out there about aviation. I wanted to inform people about what we do here at this level and how we got to this level and what to expect. And your book emulates the very same facts, just much more eloquently than I could ever put it. But it does the same. It teaches people what to expect. And a lot of times I think dreams are missed and opportunities are squandered because people hesitate out of fear of not knowing what to expect.
Yep.
And if you can break down those walls brick by brick with all these tools to put in your leadership toolbox, like this book and this podcast, then by all means, it's the way to do it. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Yeah. You guys have any?
I got one.
Yeah, okay.
I got one.
Go ahead.
I know you're going to ask your other typical question that you ask. I'll leave that to you. But one of the questions that I have is, when you got started and you said you went to SIU and they kind of said, hey, come down and check it out, and you looked at college programs. Were you aware of these college programs at the time, or did your high school talk about this, or how did you find out about it? Because when I was going through, and I'm assuming you're about the same age as me, I got my private in 2005 after I graduated high school. So we're along the same time frame.
Exactly. Same age.
The college programs, the only one I knew of at the time was Embry-Riddle. And there's no way in hell that my dad was going to spend $200,000 a year so I could go to Embry-Riddle and become a pilot and do all that. How did you find out about the college programs?
That is such a great question. It was literally, because again, I had nobody, right? So it is so funny to wax poetic a little bit about how crazy life is sometimes and things that we take for granted. If I wasn't at that high school, at that, at the right time with this person as my counselor, and this is so sad because I can't remember her name right now, but when SIU sent these flyers out to all of the high schools in the area, she slid that across her desk and said, "Oh, you like flying? Well, maybe you should look at this." She didn't necessarily have to hear that in what I was saying. She was trained to hear it, and she heard it, and she said, you should go look into this. And I said, wow, that sounds cool, because I'm a big nerd when it comes to airplanes. And at that point, I think I was driving. No, I wasn't driving. No. I don't know. Anyway, I still scare people when I pass by airports because I might lane hug somebody else. But so she slid it across. And at that point I was like, oh, this is a college, because I don't know what I had thought of prior to that, but I did know that was a real route. Lewis University, which is right south of Chicago in Joliet, or near Joliet, it's in Romeoville, but near Joliet. I knew they had a program because they had a similar type of day. And I went there when I was in middle school. But at that point, I thought it was more maintenance. I didn't know exactly that they flew. I didn't really know what was going on. So yeah, it was this counselor. My sister's actually a counselor too. And what actually, now to switch into my other life, ALPA, back about 5-6 years ago, we realized that we were losing a lot of pilots to counselors not knowing that. They thought the only way you could be a pilot was military, right? And that's how my parents thought it had to be. That's how a lot of people thought it had to be, because, well, that's just how it used to be, right? Mm-hmm. Their parents' generation, were World War II pilots. That's how they got. Well, that's how they did it.
That was my dad. If you listen to his journey, he fought at the time the Vietnam pilots coming out and like battling his way into it. So I mean, really, the only chance you had was grind out 7,000, 8,000 hours in the GA world, or go give your life away for 6 years in Vietnam.
Yeah, and that was not a guaranteed bet that you're coming back.
Exactly.
So I mean, that's so ALPA went to ASCA, which is the American School Counselors Association, and we made sure that we were like, you guys need to know how to tell your students that there are many routes to aviation. Mm-hmm. And especially at the time that we started that initiative, the drone program was growing, which had a lot less requirements to, eyesight, color blindness. You had, your color blindness has to be perfect, right? I mean, like it's crazy. So, that's a very, very important point. I think counselors, I would venture to guess that counselors probably have the largest weighted impact on students out next to parents, because they have the ability to fill in some gaps that students and the parents just wouldn't know about.
Yeah.
So
guidance counselors are tremendous. I mean, a similar story. I go back to, I forget which episode it was, but, talking about my story, 16 years old guidance counselor sliding a flyer across the desk saying, hey, there's this Aviation Career Education Academy. You should go check it out. It's guidance counselors they have so much influence. And so, kudos to you guys for trying to get the word out.
Well, and that was kind of my big thing is like, how did you found out about it through a guidance counselor? And I wish that these were around because I grew up here in Southern California, and, most of the people were going off to be a doctor, or be a lawyer, or be whatever. Right. And at that time, I kind of wanted to fly. I didn't know it at the time. And I wish that there were these guidance counselors who knew about aviation programs and who could be like, hey, if you're into this, I see that your dad does this. I see that you're looking at it. Here's X, Y, and Z schools, because I knew only of Embry-Riddle, little did I know there's Southern Illinois, Liberty, Ohio University, Ohio State, Purdue, ASU, these are all just off the top of my head. UND, all these different schools that have a great aviation program. And yet the word's not out there for college students or high school students going, hey, you're serious about aviation? Cool. Look at these 15 schools.
Yeah. And guidance counselors can also put you in the wrong direction. Now for Terry, it really helped get him started on a career in aviation. If you want to hear about Terry's very first time he was on the podcast, you have to go back to Flight 27. Flight back. 27 on the 24th of February of 2020. It was the first time I had the privilege and honor to interview Mr. Terry here. It's called Apaches, C-12s, UC-35s, and Battalion Commander with Colonel Terry Schooler. It was one of my favorite podcasts to record because, I've known Terry a long time, and you get to interview your friends, and I got to hear about how his guidance counselor kind of shifted his direction. And I didn't know that about Terry. I thought I was his friend. He never told me that. He didn't share these things with me.
Did you learn how to title shows back then?
No, because they were like really, really long. And some of these titles were like 3 lines long. I think now I'm better, but yeah. And we've talked about this before.
I know.
But the guidance counselors can go in the opposite direction as well. I can remember interviewing Captain Adelia Sky Roberts. It was one of my favorite shows of last season. And in that episode, she talked about how her guidance counselor told her, you'll never be a pilot. You're a woman, you're an immigrant, and you're, don't have any money, and it's just never going to happen for you. And we're sitting there going, wait, your guidance counselor told you what?
Yeah.
They said that you should be a waitress because waitress make good tips. I mean, it's offensive. It's deplorable what some of these guidance counselors will tell these young minds. And, thank you for being a part of educating them, giving them the tools to lead these young people into a career in aviation that have turned out like, look at Adelia. She's a captain, Airbus captain in Miami. Fantastic career field. And she had every hurdle possible thrown at her.
Wasn't that the same episode that they basically told her, use your
God-given talent?
Yeah, use your God-given talents to help you further your career.
Yeah, and broadcasting. It was awful.
Yeah.
I mean, we all sat there with our jaws open.
I didn't get to make that show, but I listened to it, and I can't believe that that's like what people like.
I'm trying to find her episode.
It's in the 90s.
Well, and that's not even.
100s.
His sad part is that happens. There's a very famous story, right? Well, within certain airline circles, I'm going to keep this as general as I can, but even up to a year ago, a very, very prominent individual who is running one of the big 3 programs that cultivates talent for big airlines went in front of a group of women aviators at probably Women in Aviation in March 2022. And when they asked some standard question, like, what happens when you are having trouble getting hired? And the guy's answer was some generic thing like, oh, well, keep trying, make sure you get your app reviewed, and then list off all the standard things. And then at the end of that statement, he caps it off with a hilarious joke. He thought it was, well, and if that doesn't work, you can just marry rich. At a Women in Aviation conference, he was promptly fired from his role. Promptly.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
So it's still happens, right?
That's not funny.
No,
not
at all.
It's insensitive.
It's dumbfounding that it still happens.
Yeah. Well, the episode that had Adelia on was Flight 108, Pushing Past Barriers. See, that's a nice title,
yeah,
right?
See, you shortened them down. That's a lot better.
Yeah, that was back in the 2nd of May of 2022 when we had the privilege to interview her. We had Roger and Rob were on, and we interviewed Captain Adelia, and her story is amazing. So if you haven't heard that episode, I highly recommend after this one, go back and take a listen to that one as well. Now, gentlemen, we've gone well past the time that we were going to allot. I know you have some packing to do. You got to find your EFB and your kit bag, and it's in a box somewhere.
As long as I get the EFB, and the safety vest,
the checklist, and the safety vest. Yeah.
Got to have the safety vest.
It's always a safety vest.
It's the 787. There is no paper checklist.
Oh, jeez.
I have a little button that I click, and it comes up.
Yeah.
And if something isn't done, it's not green.
Oh.
It's a tough life.
So is it almost like that mechanical checklist in Terry's airplane that they just flip all the little switches, except this is on a touchscreen?
I think that was only a Legacy Airlines thing. I don't think
Transglobal doesn't do that.
I don't think Transglobal does that. No. That's a leftover from the MD-80.
Okay, well, Terry, you don't have a mechanical little checklist on the 7.3 that like you have little flip switches,
the toggles.
No, ours is actually a little card that sits on the on top of the glare shield, and you pull it out.
Yeah.
It unfolds for all the emergency stuff, but the standard stuff is on the outside. So
I know for Legacy they have like right in their middle between their throttle quadrants, like at the bottom of their pedestal, it's a mechanical checklist for
Those have been deactivated though.
Yeah,
I don't think they're there anymore.
Oh no, I jump seated on one and it was still there. This was like within like the last couple months. They don't use
it.
Oh no, they used it.
Oh my god,
100%. It's takeoff and landing, and they literally flip a light for one side, and they go and they knock all the toggle switches down.
Yeah,
and then when they go to land, they flip it the other way and they knock all the toggle switches down.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great
technology.
Time, Andrew, to hang out, or do you want to go? It's up to you.
Yeah, I'll hang out.
Okay.
No, I'm fine. For a while more. Yeah.
Okay. So what I wanted to, before we, wrap up the show today, we have some audio that we want to get to, but I also wanted to talk about Asiana's open door policy. We quibbed about it earlier, but it's is that the right word? I don't know. Asiana Airlines from BBC.com. Passenger arrested for opening the aircraft door during a South Korea flight. A man had been arrested for doing just that. All 194 passengers survived the flight, which landed safely, but with its door still open at Daegu International Airport on Friday. Some passengers fainted, while others had breathing problems. I don't know why. 200 plus miles an hour of wind in your face is not a problem, right? Breathing problems.
All right. As a self-respecting half Korean, I have to correct you.
Oh yes, please.
The name of the airport is Daegu.
Oh, it's the D is pronounced like a T.
It's Daegu. It's a soft T.
It's a soft T.
Daegu.
I want to say it right. Daegu.
Daegu.
Yep. Thank you. Yes, my friend Danny Kim over in New York will be very proud. Daegu International Airport on Friday. Thank you for correcting me, Terry. So the man in his 30s said he was feeling suffocated and wanted to get off quickly. Yonhap news agency reported. Police said that the man claimed during questioning that he was stressed after losing his job, according to the report. He is mentally struggling right now and losing his footing. We could not investigate him properly due to his state, a local police officer told reporters, adding that the man could not be asked any questions as he was not in a normal state. Flight OZ8124, an Airbus A321-200 jet, had taken off from Jeju Island on Friday about 1:45 local time, and it was, did I say it right?
Yeah, you got a thumbs up from Terry.
Okay, good. And it was landing about an hour later. A male passenger opened the emergency exit door. This was the 3L door, I believe. There's a video that you probably all have seen it on social media. The flight attendant had not been able to stop him because the plane was about to land. Witnesses recounted to local media. They said that the man had also tried to jump out of the plane after opening the door. That would have ended badly for him. Passengers have described the panic on board. It was chaos, with people close to the door appearing to faint one by one, and flight attendants calling out for doctors on board through broadcasting. One 44-year-old passenger told Yonhap. I'll put a link in the show notes. You guys can read the whole story, but the question was, how come they could open the door? I thought the doors couldn't open when you're flying along.
I might have an answer to that.
Let the junior pilot.
I might have an answer to that. So they said they were on approach to land, right?
Yes, sir. 627 feet off the ground.
Okay, so their pressurization system was already set down to normal air pressure. So using the door, it opens inward. Normally the pressure keeps it.
Oh, that door opens outward.
Does it?
It's hydraulically assisted, and that's what actually opened the door. So here's the story for us Airbus pilots. I'll let you.
Okay.
It's cool.
Well, you're the only one on the show.
The 2L
right
door,
now.
which is the emergency exit full-size door on the new 321s, are full-size, and they have a hydraulic accumulator that assists the door opening. And every 6 months when I go to training, now it's not 6 months anymore. Now it's like once a year, right?
Yeah.
So every time I go to training, I have to physically activate one of the trainers. Okay. So you go, the door's armed, you pull down on the handle or you spin the handle, whatever it is. I forget what's on that door. Everyone's a little bit different. The door will crack open. It'll break the seal. And the reason it breaks the seal is because the pressure outside of the airplane is the same as the pressure on the inside of the airplane, which is what happens right before you land. usually a couple thousand feet off the ground, couple miles from landing, everything should be neutralized. And the door opens and then you have to wait 3 seconds. Why? Because the slide pops out of a compartment underneath the floor of the cabin. It pops out and it inflates and it goes out and back over the back of the wing. Well, the air pressure from the 200 mile an hour or 160 knots, whatever they were traveling right before touchdown, ripped that whole mechanism completely off. That normally the wind pressure would have repushed the door closed, right? But it has this hydraulic assist accumulator that pressurizes the door open, and it opens pretty dramatically because they tell you in training, all right, open the door and pull your hand away from the handle, because after the 3 seconds that this takes for the slide to inflate, that door will open and rip your hand pull you right out of the airplane. That's how strong it is. That is the only reason why that door could open. And if you look at some of the photos online, you see that the door swings open and forward, and it's all bent because of the high pressure of the airflow. So, yeah.
So I was partially right.
You were.
The air pressure, at least of that.
The air pressure part was absolutely correct, yeah. If he tried to do that at 10,000 feet, I don't think he would have been able to open the door. However, we don't know if it's a fault in the system, that because that particular door is one of the only ones that has that 3 second delay. And I could be off by some minor details, but that's generally how it works. And then it hydraulically assists. The other doors aren't like that. So I'm sure the NTSB is going to, or I guess not the NTSB, but whatever Asiana's governing authority on accident investigation will investigate, and Airbus will get involved. And I'm sure there'll be some kind of news about that.
Yeah. I'm curious to see the follow up on that, of how that was actually able to be opened, especially in flight.
Yeah, while you're flying.
Yeah,
you generally don't want more. You don't want to make the emergency door more complicated than it is, right? Because it's supposed to work if everything is completely broken on the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to ask yourself, this pretty much is going to seal up them. They're going to have to put like something, whether it's a squat switch or an accelerometer somewhere inside. I mean, accelerometers are cheap nowadays. My aeronautical engineering background that I don't have, you can just throw in an accelerometer and it can see that it's not moving anymore.
There's
and
one in my phone.
There's one in your phone. They're like $10. You throw an accelerometer in there with some power source, and then he goes, "Oh, yeah, they probably do want to open the door right now because we're not moving." Or, "Oh, I'm still violently traveling through the air at 160 miles," or whatever it thinks.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know how they're going to be able to keep that just from going around, because now that secret's out.
Copycat time.
Yep. Yeah, I personally don't think that they should televise anything, not mass shootings, not anything like that. They should just say an event happened.
Well, that's why,
suspect was terminated
in San Diego
instantly.
When I used to live down in San Diego, they would not advertise the bridge jumpers in Coronado on the TV. Because they don't want people copycatting and causing the traffic. They just say, "Oh, there's a major delay on the Coronado Bay Bridge."
Something I wish that the San Francisco Tribune would have done in the 80s and 90s, because they had to put up fences around the Golden Gate.
Yeah,
just saying.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I'm just glad that you were witness to that story, because we all kind of laughed a little bit about that when we read it this week. But yeah, it can happen, and it'll lead to hopefully a future improvement of how that door is operated, and hopefully it won't lead to any copycatters out there. Well, gentlemen, recently I received some audio feedback from a listener, from Stieg. He sent us something from the website, from SpeakPipe, and I was so excited to hear it, and I want to play that for all of you now.
Hey guys, how you going? It's Stig here. Stig is my alias, of course. I'm an Airbus A350 pilot that flies for a large operator. And the reason I'm sending you this audio is to thank you for your help. You don't know about your help, how you helped me, but I'm a non-native speaker, English speaker, I should say. And I was due to renew my English language test about 6 months ago. and I started looking for aviation-related podcasts, and I came across you guys. And I downloaded the old episodes, and I started listening to it to prepare for my test. I did the test. I got level 6, which means I don't ever have to do this test again. So thank you very much for that. The only problem is that in the process, I became a huge fan. So now I'm very anxious waiting for the new episodes to come out every month or so. So that's my story. I would like to thank you again for your great podcast, for the effort you have every month to put out new material. And yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys around. Thank you.
So thanks again, Steek, for sending that in. It's so nice to always, when I get these listener feedbacks, because you'd be surprised how much it motivates all of us to keep this podcast going, to keep it going. I know a lot of you have noticed that I've slowed down quite a bit, and there's a lot of reason for that. I'm going to drop some truth bombs here for all of you listeners. That here we are, about an hour and a half into this podcast, and you're gonna hear that I am going to be going to recurrent training next month. It's my annual recurrent training for the Airbus A320. The other day I was flying, and we were climbing through, I don't know, whatever 1,000 feet as we're getting to top of climb, and I got a company message on my tablet, on my work tablet, on my EFB. And I went, oh, what's this? Watch it be a reassignment, I say to the captain. I pull it up, and it's an HI6 message. Now, we have CCI messages, we have HI6 messages. Usually the HI6 message is like, hey, your medical is about to expire, something like that. And I thought, well, my medical's not about to expire. What is this? So I clicked on it, and it said, congratulations, First Officer Tony, Aviator Tony. You have been awarded Airbus Captain Los Angeles. So yeah, I guess I'll be joining Captain Rob's exciting training ranks here pretty soon. Captain Rob, who couldn't make it today to the podcast, is in the middle of IOE right now for his upgrade out of Dallas on the Airbus. So yeah, I was told, I got a follow-up email a couple days later. I was told that I should expect a class date pretty soon, sometime in July. So yeah, I thought it was another year away, honestly, because I'm about 36% in base, which means of all the FOs that are based in Los Angeles, I am 36% from the top. So I thought, well, it's going to be another year or so. But I guess there's a lot of FOs that just don't want to be third from the bottom, as what I will be as of right now, third from the bottom. And the only saving grace is Legacy Airlines does not have field ready or airport standby or airport ready reserve. We don't have that. We have short call and long call, and I'll probably be on short call and get the phone call going, we need you in Los Angeles in 3 hours. Can you make it? Like,
depends on what traffic's like.
Exactly. So I look forward to that new adventure. And someone told me recently, why are you going to recurrent? Why don't you just tell them, hey, I'm going to upgrade in a month, skip it? I said, well, that's free training. I'm just going to go for 4 days and go through all the motions in the right seat, and then I'll go back a month later and do it all from the left seat, and I'll be a little bit sharper. I mean, I'm not afraid of training. I love training. So yeah.
You'll also be in Dallas in July, and I'll be in Dallas in July.
Oh, there you go. So you're saying you're going to have a pool?
We have a lazy river. That's a 5-minute walk from my house.
Okay,
so you're more than welcome to come
de-stress
and float in that for a couple days.
I love it. I love it. Thank you very much. So thank you. Everybody's clapping quietly in the background because they're podcasters. But thank you guys. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the adventure, and of course, I'm going to share it with all of you. So, with that said, between schedules, all of us have had crazy schedules. This summer is not going to get any easier.
Nope.
They're already projecting that we're going to have a lack of air traffic controllers to the point where we're going to have extensive ground delays going into a lot of major destinations. I know JetBlue and some of the other airlines on the East Coast have started by canceling thousands of flights over the summer already in anticipation for these. I think what's happening is they're just not getting the slots that they were anticipating, so they oversold, and now they have to cancel flights because there's just not going to be the time, the air traffic control, time metered management, whatever they call that. So TMU, right? Time management unit. So it's going to be a crazy summer. So the podcasts we're coming out fewer and fewer every month. Like Tick said in that audio feedback, about once a month. I used to do it once every week, and then I went to once every 2 weeks and once every 3 weeks, and now I'm getting closer to once a month, and that's okay for a while. There's some other big news on my personal life, which will come out as time goes on. We all have growth going on. You're moving, we've got Alex is going to be moving to another country. Really? What's the Texas? Is that?
Yeah.
They speak English in Texas?
Some parts.
Partner, you're going to start having that southern twang.
Yeah, well, maybe a little bit.
What's up, y'all? How y'all doing today? You want to come over some barbecue and some iced tea? Come on,
I'm going to hit you with a y'all and a dude in the same sentence, and people are going to look at me going, what the hell did you just say?
What? They're going to correct you on that, too, and how you spell y'all, too. So, yeah. Well, we look forward to hearing about that, and, and Terry's got some big news, too. Terry, you're going to drop that bomb now, or?
Do it. Going to training in 3 weeks.
4?
7576.
7576. So you started on the bus, and you started on the 7.3.
The guppy.
The guppy. So you started on the 7.3, and you're not even there a year, and you're already upgrading to a 7576, and then you're going to do all that international stuff that Andrew was talking about at the beginning of the show.
Yep. Looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Good. And if you have any questions about it, now you know who to call.
Yeah. Definitely.
The Ghostbusters.
2,200 hours in that plane. It's a great airplane. I did not leave it because I didn't like the plane. It flies, the 7.6 flies even better than the 7.5, which is weird. Everybody gets that Atari Ferrari excitement over the 7.5, but the 7.6 is a 2-finger airplane. You can fly that like a 152.
Hey,
such a great
family
awesome.
show, ladies and gentlemen, family show. Well, last audio we're going to share before we wrap it up today. This was supposed to be shorter shows, damn it. Last audio, one of our co-hosts had a meetup, his first meetup.
Well, it's the show's first meetup.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
that too, because
it's, you know what? I was happy to do it. We had a listener. So like I said, there's 2 Keiths, right? Mm-hmm. There's, I don't want to say young Keith and old Keith, but there's the kid Keith who's in UND, who's met up with him a couple times. Student Keith. That's the one who I keep trying to push the book to. Keith, buy this book. And then there's Keith who lives in Little Rock, who wrote into the show.
Who's also kind of a student pilot, right? Isn't
No. He's got his sport and private. He's starting on his instrument. So I mean, I guess if you want to
starting on his instrument,
he's still a student, but he's a licensed pilot.
Okay.
So, and he was like, "Hey, I see that Alex is in Little Rock a lot, and I know Legacy goes through there, Sand Piper goes through there. Like, if any of you are ever in the Little Rock area, please, do not hesitate." And so I emailed him, and we started exchanging emails back and forth, and we missed on one because I screwed up my days, and we got another one. We went out to dinner to Gus's Fried Chicken in downtown Little Rock. I highly recommend Gus's Chicken. I see the nods from the 2 gentlemen here. They know Gus's Chicken. And met up with him and his son Liam, and it was a good night. And what Keith doesn't know is I'm coming back through Little Rock again, which this is all news now, and I will have an extended time where he can take me up in his airplane.
Oh, lucky him!
Yeah,
you just invite yourself over. Hey.
Well, he and you'll hear it in the audio that he's about to play that he has extended an invite that if I have a longer overnight there where we can go up in his airplane, he would gladly take me up and watch me struggle just like you did. So it's going to come full circle.
And here's the audio from that.
Hey, Tony, what's going on? It's Alex live from the road out here in Little Rock. Out here, and I'm with one of our listeners. It's my first official meetup with one of our fans here. His name's Keith. He's written into the show. He told me hey, if you're ever in Little Rock, give me a call. We'll go out to dinner. We'll do something. I'd love to meet up. So, Keith, how's it going?
Hey, Alex. Yeah, Keith Carlson here in Little Rock, and my son Liam came out to say, hey, Liam. Hi. Okay, yeah, very enthusiastic, as you can tell, 12-year-old. So anyways, no, I've been just enthralled with, obviously with the show, with everything that you're doing, Tony, and so forth, and then just listening to Alex's journey, and I kind of picked up a couple of times he mentioned Little Rock, and so and I'm a big listener of the APG show. So Captain Jeff came through several months ago, had lunch, and so I said, you know what, let's get Alex out here. I'd love to meet, and I actually just passed my private pilot check ride this week, so yay. Anyway, so we've had a blast. We had some Gus's fried chicken, and just was great to hear more of Alex's story and to connect. And that's what I love about what you've done, Tony, is build a community, and brought people onto the show like Alex and everybody else that you guys connect with and inspire. So we can't thank you enough. And Alex, man, it's just been a blast. I feel like we haven't stopped talking.
We haven't, and
we
it's
have
been
not
awesome.
stopped talking.
It's been so awesome. Loved every minute of it.
So Alex is so one of our next times that Alex is in town, we are absolutely going to go up. I have a Tecnam P2008. We're going up. We're going to record. We're going to get to see Alex back in the GA world landing an airplane. So take that, Tony.
God, don't start this with Tony again. Please don't. It should be fun, just like it was with Tony. Right, and hopefully my reflexes will be good, and I won't flare at 30 feet just like Tony did.
Right.
So it'll be fun.
Yeah. So, anyways, man, just Alex, thanks a ton, man, for coming out. This has been a blast.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah. We we tried to coordinate a couple of times earlier this month, but no, this is great. So I can't wait to do it again, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah. We'll do it again. All right, we'll send it back to you in the studio, Tony.
And back to the studio we are, and with Alex in the studio. How did you do that?
It's the magic of TV.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, I just want to wrap it up with that one. Thank you so much, Keith, for putting up with Alex here and hosting him there in Little Rock and going to Gus's. I was just in Gus's in Atlanta, and I think I was raving about that. I even posted about that.
I love
that
Gus's
place is
chicken.
amazing.
Oh God! Every time I go to Little Rock and I have the time, it's like 5-10 minutes from the hotel.
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah, but then you got to go run afterwards to dissuage the guilt. But
well, that's we're not going to talk about that.
That's another show.
Yeah,
Well, we're going to wrap it up today. We just want to say thank you to all of you out there, and thank you so much to Terry and Alex for joining me in the studio for the first time. It was fun. This kind of small in here though. This closet's kind of tiny.
If you knock down that wall and knock down that wall and that wall and that wall,
that's the third wall.
Oh, okay.
So that's the third wall.
Oh. The fourth wall's that way. Yeah, that's the fourth wall. Okay. So if we knock down those three, I'm pretty sure it'd be nice and
we'd be outside.
Yeah, probably.
Well, and I want to say thank you to Andrew Ross because what you've done here is amazing. And for those that want to learn more about you, more about the book, more about your business, where can they go?
AirlineTransition.org is definitely our kind of home base right now. We also do write articles for Aerocrew News as well, as all three of us kind of rotate and basically whatever we want to talk about. We've talked about union stuff and picketing in this last few because it's a hot topic item. Yeah. And then DEI, CRM and stuff like that lately. And I think we've got articles written all the way through the end of the year. So that's another place. And then... yeah, but mainly airlinetransition.org. We have all of our emails come right to my phone, so I'm pretty responsive to all of it. And can't wait to thank you all for having me. This was a lot of fun. I hope I find my EFB by tomorrow, and I won't be I said it an hour, and now I'm like, well, this was too much fun to just not,
Yeah, I kind of know the feeling.
It sucks you in. Trust me, I know that feeling. You think you're going to do an episode and be like, oh, I'll be done in an hour. 3.5 hours later, you're still sitting here going, oh, shit.
Yeah. I know. I think my kids went to bed.
Well, Terry, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's late on your side of the coast there. And we thank you to all you listeners out there for putting up with us, sticking with us all these years and listening to these long format podcasts. We really do appreciate your listenership. We love getting your feedback, so please keep them coming. And we hope you enjoyed listening to this flight. as well. We hope that you pay it forward by sharing this podcast with your friends and family. Please make sure to subscribe and follow to the Squawk Ident podcast, or on whatever platform you're listening on. Make sure you click follow. You can send us an email or even audio feedback via our website at aviatortony.com. I'll put a link in the show notes for airlinetransition.org as well. Make sure you check them out. Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram users can also find us. Just search Squawk Ident Podcast. SQUAWK. Squawk. A lot of people don't know how to spell that. I'm surprised. Pilots too. Ident. 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 Podcast. Squawk Ident Podcast. And one final thank you to all of you for taking the time to listen to these grateful aviators. Keep the dirty side down out there. Be safe and take care of each other. Bye, y'all.
See ya. See ya.
Ciao.
Meow, meow.
You're on guard.
Oh, that's good.
Where is he? That's what Rob says. Where is he? Where is he?
There he is.
You're on guard. There he is.
It's an entirely different kind of flying.